did you see some interesting turns and, of course, fractures within the Republican Party. And one incident here that made a big impression was the head of the BU College Republicans saying he was a tipster behind an ICE raid at an Allston Car Wash that certainly made the news. And you talked to John Deaton about this.
Yeah, actually, after you and I last spoke last Friday, I left the studio and I went up and I started calling around to see if I could get various big-name Massachusetts Republicans to weigh in on whether they thought that what Zach Siegel, the president of the BU College Republicans, had done was appropriate or not. And on a week ago, no one wanted to talk about it. No one wanted to get back to me either to say it was a good thing or a bad thing, with the exception of John Deaton. And we can take a listen to what he had to say, because he was pretty candid.
It runs the risk of clearly profiling, racial profiling. You know, how do you know if someone's legal status? By looking at them. And there's an inherent risk of profiling brown and black people in this country.
And just to remind, I'm sorry, we didn't identify John Deaton, who just got the backing of the Mass GOP party in his run against Senator Ed Markey.
And John Deaton, who also has said that he's never voted for Donald Trump, which is sort of, just a fact worth repeating.
Talk about a fracture.
It's remarkable that the party is going with a guy who's never voted for Donald Trump, but it makes his comments about this situation a little less surprising. Now, since then, Mike Keneally, who was Charlie Baker's Secretary of Administration and Finance, and I believe also, at least on some occasions, if not all occasions, has not voted for Donald Trump. He came out and said something pretty similar to Deaton, saying, you know, he took a shot at Michelle Wu and Maura Healey, saying that they aren't cooperating with the feds enough when it comes to enforcing immigration law. But then he also went and said effectively what was done at the Allston Car Wash by this alleged purported tipster is racial profiling. It's probably worth mentioning that the Department of Homeland Security has questioned whether or not these tips that Zach Siegel says he offered were responsible for the raid or not. Now, not weighing in on whether this is appropriate behavior or not is Mike Minogue, one of the GOP candidates for governor, and Brian Shortsleeve, who is another one of the GOP candidates for governor. And just as a fact that many of our listeners will know, Zach Siegel, the president of the BU College Republicans, actually interns for Shortsleeve's campaign.
Okay, I have to ask you, because you and I have talked before, you have pointed out that the Mass GOP party has become Trump's party, that the Charlie Baker Republicans are essentially have disappeared.
It might be time to revisit that, and maybe for me to amend that assessment, because as you mentioned, we had the Mass GOP come out and endorse in the name of avoiding a competitive and taxing GOP Senate primary. They came out and endorsed a guy who says he's never voted for Trump. So I think what Amy Carnevale, the party chair, has tried to do is to bridge the gap between the Trump wing of the party, which was very much in the ascendance under former party chair Jim Lyons, and the Baker wing of the party. And I think what we're seeing now is a recognition in this Deaton endorsement. We're seeing a recognition of the party at large, no matter how people feel about President Trump, that his brand is really pretty toxic here in Massachusetts and is not a winning brand to go with, which has implications for the gubernatorial race moving forward.
Sure. And as I said, you know, my key term here, you might notice today, is fractures.
Yeah. Well,
and of course, the Epstein files are huge, and nothing represents those fractures better than that. And Senator Elizabeth Warren, we just heard from her in the newscast. We'll get back to that issue, but she talked also about the issue of the Epstein files, in addition to the issue of these apparent threats made by President Trump.
In his appearance on Stephen Colbert.
Yes, this was late show with Stephen Colbert last night. She was on, and she says she'll be examining whatever is released by the DOJ next week in these Epstein files very closely.
Is there any way to know if stuff was taken out that we don't know was taken out?
We can't just say when it gets to be December 19th, well, okay, great, now we're going to get to see it all. Nope. It's whatever gets released, you're going to have to now start doing the comparisons. So wait, why is this thing numbered page 1, 2, 3, 9?
So she's sounding rather skeptical there that even though the Republican Party has unanimously, well, almost, there was one guy who voted against it.
Right, Chip Roy, I believe, from
Right.
Texas, yeah.
And the president completely turned around 180 degrees.
Total
and
180.
And signed this bill.
Or is going to, yeah.
Or is going to. Yeah,
I
sorry.
I don't think he's signed it just yet.
Oh, okay.
What I was struck by in
Yes.
Warren's appearance is the different way that Democrats and Republicans are talking about these revelations to come. You hear President Trump and congressional Republican leaders and others saying, oh, Democrats better watch out. There's going to be a lot of big name Democrats named in this. Maybe
Right.
we'll see Bill Clinton's name pop up.
Right.
We're going to see Larry Summers' name
Yes.
pop up, as it
Yes.
already has, the former Harvard president and Treasury Secretary. And Democrats, I'm not getting the impression from what Elizabeth Warren and others say publicly that they're worried about that at all. I feel like the Democratic attitude is, yeah, if big name Democrats pop up, so be it. These people should be held accountable. There just seems to be a really different framing of this issue. It seems to be being framed along party lines by President Trump and congressional Republican leaders, and more as a matter of morals and ethics and justice on the part of Democrats.
Well, why do you think the Democrats aren't worried?
That's a great question. I don't think they're not worried because they're not going to see any Democratic names pop up. I mean, we've already seen Summers' name pop up. I think there's probably a hope that Trump will be implicated. So I think that's probably part of it. And there might also be a fundamentally different attitude about whether the nature of the crimes that Epstein committed and is accused of committing is so fundamentally heinous that the truth needs to be out there no matter who it makes look bad.
And as you say, there's a sort of a so be it attitude, even if it,
I think there is.
even if it was a sitting member of Congress somehow that turned up or whoever,
Yeah.
throw them under the bus.
I
Fine.
do think there is. No, it may also be because, if Democrats are hoping that Trump is implicated, and I'm sure that they're hoping that, there's no comparable figure right now. I mean, I guess you could say Bill Clinton, but I don't think a lot of Democrats right now have the same emotional attachment to Bill Clinton that they did when he left the presidency.